delegated that so she can go ahead and lead us in all of that. Thank you.
All right.
Hi, I'm going to keep this short. It's just a quick thought from Audrey Hepburn. As you grow older, you'll discover that you have two hands, one for helping yourself, the other for helping others. And I just wanted to comment that with the weather getting so much better now, there are plenty of opportunities to get out and volunteer in the community. I'm sure Barker Park cleanup would like some help. Cherry Days, I know, has lots of stuff going on. So we all have talents and gifts, and I would just encourage everyone to get out and volunteer. And if you all would stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Sandy. We really appreciate your participation this evening. So now we will proceed with the reason most of you are here tonight, and that is the swearing in of the new North Ogden City Police Chief, Brian Eynon, although he'll be working under the direction of Chief Quinney for the next couple of weeks. Chief Quinney will remain our chief for a period of time, but very excited for them to work together and get a plan in place. So with that, our recorder, Brian, if you would step up here and swear in Brian.
It's a pleasure to meet you, sir. Okay, raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this state,
and the Constitution of this state,
and that I will discharge the duties
and I will discharge the duties
of my office with fidelity.
of my office with fidelity.
Congratulations, sir. Welcome to North Ogden City.
Thank you.
We will get this together.
Brian, welcome to the North Ogden family. We're excited you're joining us. It's bittersweet. At the same time you're joining, we'll surely miss Chief Quinney. But welcome to the family, and we look for great and important things. So those of you who would like to leave now, you're welcome to, or you're welcome to stay for the whole meeting and enjoy the great things that goes on. If you want to. All right, we'll proceed with our meeting. Tonight, we're pleased to have with us Spencer and Megan Stevens, who have graciously volunteered to head up the activities of Cherry Days. And surely on behalf of the council and the city, I want to express our appreciation. Surely it's not an easy task, as we've all found out, but just want to deeply express our appreciation for your willingness to do this important event. So with that, whoever, is Lincoln going to be making the presentation this evening? On there? Well, whoever's going to make the presentation, or if you both want to step up, or all three of you, proceed.
Okay. Hey, council. Thanks for having me tonight. We created a slideshow just with a few slides on it. We didn't go quite as crazy as we did last year with the slideshow because we're really going to run back a lot of the same events. So tonight we just want to talk about the budget as well as some of the changes that we are making this year.
You send it to me.
I never received that.
Oh boy. Okay.
Apologize.
It's okay. John, can I forward this to you real fast? Yep. Let's do that. Okay, that's coming to you right now. So while we're waiting on that, I just want to take a second and thank all of our sponsors. As everyone knows, the market and the economy is not doing very well this year, and we've had really quite great success finding sponsors. Although it's been at a smaller dollar amount for a lot of them, we've still had a lot of really good support for this, and the numbers you'll see tonight, they're actually a little bit low. We've had a few more sponsors step up since this was sent, and then we're still waiting to hear back for a few more. So it's been really awesome seeing all these people step up and all these companies step up to support our North Ogden Cherry Days. So the other exciting thing that I'll kind of step in while we're waiting that to go through is I think most of you know that Red, White, and Boom has agreed to move their fireworks to the 4th so that we still get 2 amazing fireworks celebrations in North Ogden City. But this time we're going to have one on the 4th and then one on the Saturday following. So one celebrating America, the United States of America, and the other one celebrating North Ogden. So really excited about that. And that is it's a partnership between them. Red, White, and Boom is still going to manage that event from start to finish. We're excited because we just get to hang out, relax, and enjoy it versus trying to run every piece of it. And we as a committee just agreed to help fund that. So still nothing.
Spencer, where will that be held? Just, I don't know if it's in your slides or not, but while John's trying to locate that,
Yeah, it'll
where
be,
will Red, White, and Boom be
they're going to do it at the same place at Bates.
at Bates?
Mhm.
You know how big the file is?
It's 1 meg.
Oh.
Looking in all of my email files. just in case.
I'm gonna send you another email address, Megan.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? while
You
we're
bet.
waiting?
Yeah.
So when you say it's a partnership with Red, White, and Boom, you get to advertise it in the packet, right?
We are going to advertise
Oh,
for
great.
them. Yeah. And then it also helps them in a couple of ways. Working with John and Councilmember Barker, we were able to get it to where they're going to have some insurance protections from the city.
Mhm.
So it'll be run a little bit different this year, but we want to make sure the emphasis is out there that they are the ones running that event. But it is going to be a partnership between the city and Red, White, and Boom on it.
Great. I just know that there's been several citizens asking questions, and so it's kind of nice to have them connected so that they can see both options, same piece of paper, or whatever. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, it will go out in all the marketing materials.
I'd asked Councilmember Barker this while John's trying to find this. I think he told me one time that when the city shoots off fireworks, they can have a different type than private events. So they're probably allowed to have, they're not, even though it's a city event.
Not unless they get their pyrotechnic license to shoot them. So they're still on technically consumer grade, not commercial grade.
I like the word technically. Thank you.
I haven't seen the packaging though.
Yeah. And we have their initial order. They've sent it over to us. That's a quote that the city will need to help pay for. We've agreed to pay $5,000 towards their fireworks, and then they're picking up the remainder. So we'll probably want to run that by you to make sure that they're buying appropriate stuff. It's a little outside of my wheelhouse.
Did you find it, John?
No, it's,
Let me just walk you through it. There's not
Okay.
a whole lot of information here. I'll walk you through it. Please feel free to stop me at any time. So in 2024, the money that so far is the $31,000 from the city. Our current sponsorship dollars that we're showing here are 44,500. Again, that number is going to go up a little bit. We're having to stop the sponsorship tomorrow so that we can get all of the print ads done and sent. Last year, we brought in about $51,859. So a little bit below, but we'll close that gap a little bit. And then we have the rollover money from the remaining last year of $20,432, which brings us to a total this year of $95,932 to start. which is more than we had last year to start. Last year it was about 88,195. So the changes we're going to make this year is that we're going to hold the movie in the park at the amphitheater instead of at North Ogden Park. We're going to have a kids marketplace during the car show. The car show last year told us that that was the best attended car show that they've ever put on. So we're hoping by adding the kids marketplace that we'll be able to set a new record there. We're going to put the Guns and Hoses baseball game back on the 4th. We're still kind of working through some of the timing on having moved the parade back to the 4th. It's messed up a few of the times. So we're still working through that. We'll get a final dates and times put out on everything.
Spencer, have we got the permit changed then? Have they, as UDOT agreed to close on the 4th, the street on the 4th? Are we in process there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So we've got a verbal yes from them, and they told us that we could expect the written on Thursday.
Good.
Yeah.
So also on that Hill Air Force Base, will you be able to do the flyover then?
We should resubmit that. They initially declined our offer because it wasn't on the 4th, so we should resubmit for that.
Just, yeah.
Yeah, we'll dig in. We've added a dance party the night of July 5th. We've removed the chalk art contest, and the pickleball court or pickleball tournament this year is actually going to be held in North Ogden at the new courts. Mo Betas is going to cater the luau. They have a catering service, so that will work a lot better for us. And then we've hired a company to run the foam party for us. This is anyway, we've been able to see a lot of video and stuff of what they've been able to do, and it's going to give us the desired outcome. So for our total cost for last year, we're right about 120,000. So if we anticipate the same, oh, there you go. If we anticipate the same $120,000 budget with revenues of $55,000, expect the upfront money that we have, that gets us to a total expected money in of 150,000, which we're hoping to return about $30,000 to the city at the end of the event. That's all I have. Do you guys have any more questions for me?
The carnival on is that on Friday and Saturday then?
Yes. Yeah, same schedule as last year for everything else.
Okay. All right. Any questions, council?
So with moving the parade back to the 4th, then how does that leave your Saturday? Are you still feeling, I'm just trying to catch up with all of the.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's a lot there. We can go through all of them if you'd like. I just hit the changes in them. But
You're feeling good about it.
we're feeling really good about it. Yeah, it seemed like the carnival just continued to gain momentum as as the 2 days went on, and people even coming late on Saturday couldn't believe what a value it was for everything they were getting for the cost of that wristband. And so we feel like now word of mouth is going to only make that event better with more people. And I think that's true for most of the events.
So
Spencer, go ahead, Councilmember
Sorry.
Watson.
I see that the,
Councilwoman, can you speak into the microphone? I know that
yeah, thank
people
you.
struggle to hear you.
I see that the breakfast is during the parade, but yeah, I guess you figure there's not going to be too much of conflict there.
Yeah, and that's one of the timing issues that we're still kind of trying to work through. The breakfast does start below, so the parade goers could go earlier.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, there is about an hour of overlap there. So that's one of the things we're working through.
Councilmember Severing.
Spencer, no question, but I wanted to thank you and Megan and Lincoln, thank you as well for being here tonight, but thank you for helping us with Cherry Days, okay?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. It's been a lot of fun.
Spencer, I remember one time in a conversation, you felt like the success of the carnival was tied closely to the parade, but you're anticipating equal or better attendance this year, even though it's on a different day. Has that changed a bit or something?
Yeah, and there was some concern going into it, moving that away where you have that natural draw from people coming directly from the parade over to the carnival. But I do think that properly advertised and people remembering what they did and got last year. I think it's going to turn out really well.
Because that's an important part of your financial situation, right? As I recall, you collected quite a bit of,
We
money
did.
last year.
Yeah. I mean, net, that still was a loser last year. That was, money wise, right? It was one of the events that was subsidized by sponsors, which we were fine with because of the overall weeks long money, right? How it all ended up. But we do feel comfortable with it.
Good.
Yeah.
Any other questions, council, for Mr. Stevens? Councilmember Pulver?
So, and this might be coming later, but I assume that you guys are looking for council help on events to participate or whatever.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll send out a list of, we'll send out this list in a digital format and have everybody sign up for different events that they can be at and help and different, volunteer opportunities.
Okay, any other questions?
Awesome.
Once again, thanks so much.
Yeah.
We know it's taken a lot of effort and time, and appreciate your dedication to our community.
Yeah.
Even though we know Megan's doing most of the work.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
He told me that earlier. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. With that, we'll go ahead and call council for any conflicts of interest that you may have in regards to tonight's agenda. Are there any? Okay, I don't see any, so we'll now proceed to item 3, which is a action to approve the May 7th, 2024 work session meeting minutes. I think Ryan sent those out in advance and you've had a chance to look at those. And so I would be looking for a motion to approve those minutes.
A motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Councilmember Watson.
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Pulver. Are there any comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor of approval of the minutes of the May 7th work session, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Have with us this evening Dylan Hill. He's going to talk to the council about final acceptance of the Spring Meadow subdivision.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, I do have a presentation for the Spring Meadows subdivision. It's 14 lots down on the southwest side of the city, started in 2019. About a year ago, May 17th, 2023, I came and presented a similar presentation for conditional approval of the improvements. All the improvements in the drawings are done. The warranty period is expired, and it's the recommendation of our city engineer, Eric Casperson, to provide final approval for the Spring Meadows subdivision.
Okay, thank you. Council, any questions for Dylan? All right, I don't see any. So with that, if there's no questions, I'd be looking for a motion to approve the final acceptance of the Spring Meadows subdivision.
So moved, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Severing. Have a second to the motion.
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Watson. Any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, then all in favor of approving the final acceptance of Spring Meadows, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you again, Dylan, for your
Appreciate it, guys. Thank
diligence and appreciate it. We'll now move on to item 5 on our agenda, which is public comments. Just a refresher, those who would like to speak to the council regarding city business this evening, if you would step up to the the podium here and state your name. And if you're a resident of North Ogden, and please help the mayor by limiting your comments to no longer than 5 minutes. And let's be respectful and see if we can't figure working together how to solve some problems.
Certainly.
Sir?
My name is Charles Chandler. I'm a resident of Three Fountains condominiums that are located right behind the Maverick station. We have the consent or the approval of all residents within Three Fountains. We're asking that the speed limit in front of Three Fountains be reduced. My understanding is that it used to be 50 miles an hour on 25, so that's 2550 north. Then it was reduced again down to 40 miles an hour. The problem we have is when people pull out of the Maverick station, the first thing they see is 40 miles an hour. And when they see that sign, they automatically accelerate to 40 miles an hour. And it's so loud and it's so dangerous. And I'm trying to understand too, it's 30 miles an hour going up Washington Boulevard up into North Ogden. But when you get on 2550, it's 40 miles an hour. So we're requesting that there either be a sign that says 30 miles an hour because you have the senior citizens in Three Fountains, you have the fire station next to them, and then you have two schools going down 2550. And so we'd like you to consider reducing it to 30 miles an hour. If you can't do that, then we would, the police presence, you only have so many policemen. We need to have some sort of a flashing light or sign that says for them to reduce their speed. Some of those signs are run through solar power and it flashes. You've had it up Washington Boulevard, going up the hill there. So that's all we're asking is for a reduction of the speed. We think it would be safer. People coming towards from west to east, when they get on that road and they see the lights going to change, those people accelerate trying to get through the light. And, we've had a number of accidents there. We think this could be solved by reducing the speed limit and also posting the speed limit sign. If you do it for 30, right where the 40 mile an hour sign is, but 40 is too fast. There's no restriction for them to go from 0 to 40 in 2 seconds.
Okay. John, would you get with the chief and Dave and address that issue? And if you would give your phone number to our recorder, that'll allow us to follow up with you after the proper research is done on what can and needs to be done.
Sure.
Possible.
I'll do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for attending this evening. John, do we have anyone online this evening?
We do have people online, no hands raised at this point.
Okay.
Mayor and council, thank you for this opportunity. My name is David Shoup. I live in Liberty, Utah. I apologize for my appearance. I'm biking today. And I won't be able to stay to the end of the meeting because I got to get home in a timely manner. So first of all, thank you for moving the traffic merge left sign that's in front of the hospital and for the riser that has been placed. That was nice of you to make that happen. I am concerned, however, over the council's decision to change the ordinance concerning winter parking, especially after we invested $30,000 to North Ogden City to buy that 1/10 of an acre where the new parking lot currently exists. And Big O is allowed, they come in, they're on your agenda, and it was approved to change the ordinance to allow Big O and their employees to park alongside that road that is just north of their facility. And I'm questioning why. Why is it that we have to play by the rules and purchase land and invest time, money, and effort in building a parking lot and landscaping it and striping it, and yet Big O gets to skate free? And it really, if you compare Big O as a company versus Coldwater Animal Hospital, who has more bucks, who has more dollars? And I'd really like an explanation, although I'm not going to get it right here and now, but if you would be kind enough to call me, I think that'd be wise and appropriate. Because I did ride my bike, I didn't see a bike rack outside. Maybe that's something the council can consider doing, is installing a bike rack so that I'm not hauling my dirty bike inside your nice new facility. really have lots of questions. You're probably all tired of hearing from me. It seems like I'm a grumpy gills whenever I come. And I always have problems that I want you to solve for me, but I really don't understand the reasoning why you as a council changed the ordinance for Big O, but you didn't allow the same for me. That's it.
Thank you. Anyone else here this evening that would like to comment? All right.
Mayor, am I allowed to speak? No.
If you'd like to speak, Councilmember Watson.
I was just gonna let you know there are bike racks in the front and the back of the library next door for next time. There is. It's in the parking lot.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to item number 6 then, which is a discussion or action to consider adopting an official policy for city-sponsored partnering and supporting events. I think Councilmember Pulver and John have worked on this. So Councilmember Pulver, would you like to lead the discussion on this?
Why, certainly. Everybody can hear me, the 5 people left. Anyway, so much important thing here. Basically what I think this all started when we were Brenda's online, so we can talk about Brenda. Is why are we sponsoring some people and others not? And I think it was an awesome question because it got us thinking, well, yeah, I mean, what does the city and what should the city not be, all in on, or should be allowed to, pick up the trash or, something like that anyway, or just let them use the facility. So this is, I mean, it's long and lengthy. And if you don't like reading words, then don't become an engineer and don't listen to an engineer. But if you've gone through it, it basically steps through what I, kind of briefly just said, that, we got to make sure, that organizations that each city is, or that the city is either sponsoring or paying money for, or allowing them to use things either for free or at a discount, that we kind of have a protocol for that. The other big thing is, and I think John talked about it too, is the limiting the liability, or at least minimizing it, so that the city is not culpable for whatever things that happen. And so is there any questions? I mean, I can step through it, but basically we had 3 different levels: city sponsored, city partnered, and city supported. And then obviously there's other government agencies that we're involved with too. But I think the biggest thing is that there's a when the either the who the POC is, and then what they have to do to either get it approved, or is it in the budget already, or do they need certain things done ahead of time before they go ahead and do it from city council or staff or somebody. So that's how we kind of did it. We racked and stacked it and put it in there so that if someone comes to city staff, they can go, let's see, what do you want? Then we can say, we don't have to go to council, or yes, we do have to get a, so that was the whole purpose of this. So that's it. Questions?
Okay. I have a question for the council. Do you know how much is in the budget for contributions or donations this year? Does anyone know that number?
It depends what you're talking about. If you're talking for police or just overall.
No, I'm talking about, money that the city donates to activities that they're going to support.
That the city does, or
Is
that the
Chalk
city
It Up
gives?
still in there? YCC? I mean, what is in there and how much is it? Does anyone know that?
The Chalk It Up is not in there. I know that.
I mean, I'm just asking. In fact, I think I requested Jamie. She may know this. And if you don't, Jamie, you don't feel free not to step up to the podium. But if you know, what's in the budget in this upcoming year for contributions or donations? I think you and I had a conversation about this. So if your memory doesn't recall that, you can skip, but if not, I think the council should know what's in there for this upcoming budget.
So you're talking, Mayor, you're talking city sponsored activities?
Any money the city is putting out for any of the events that are in this policy, which I think like YCC, $40,000.
And it's identified from what I remember specifically.
Yeah, and you may. Yeah. See, as you recall, the YCC asked for additional money. We'd historically given them, I think, $6,000 or $7,000, John. They'd asked for double that. I can't remember the other things we've, contributed to, but I think that's important for the council to know. What's in the budget as they approve a policy? Does it comply with that and how much it is? Just so that you don't get surprised.
And that was the point of this, Mayor, was to get this solidified so everybody agrees to it, then we can execute based on this.
Okay, so you'll re-examine what's in the budget to make sure it complies.
Somebody will, yes. And if you want me to lead the other, I can do that.
Councilmember Delpez, did you have a question?
I can't point to a line item, but I was under the impression that, for example, Chalk It Up is not in the budget. So let's confirm that, because that's been kind of the conversation that I've been having for the last 6 months or so. Is that was the anticipation? So, and then just in conversations that you and I have had together in the past, it seems like what makes the most sense for contributions that are being had is those that are related to the safety and welfare of our residents. So I know YCC is asking for more. I don't know how that's going to turn out, but if it's something that is a support to the safety and welfare of our residents, I think that rate's really high for the organizations that are requesting it. And others that are not related to that wouldn't score as high. And just as a reminder for those that weren't at the meeting several months ago where this discussion was kind of started, is the powers and duty handbook for city councilors that Chris and Blake have a copy of here tonight. There's a section that kind of talks about use of public funds and how you're supposed to be really careful with how you use either taxpayer or sales tax monies towards these types of things. So thanks, Councilman Pulver, for following this through and putting it on paper with John's help and everything. I really appreciate it.
Councilmember Watson?
So I don't disagree. I just know that Cherry Days is on that list, and I would hate for Cherry Days to be ranked lower because that's something that our city is kind of known for providing. And it is wonderful that we have quite a bit of sponsorship. And hopefully the money that we put up front is returned at the end. But if it's not, I would hope that, I don't know, I guess what I'm trying to say is I hope that we can consider case by case if need be, rather than just rule out anything that's not health and safety when it comes to our support. But I also had another question. I think at the last time this was brought up, there was a question of if a new group wanted to have support in some kind, that maybe they need to have that request submitted before the budget season. Is there a deadline? Is that in the contract, or is that just a suggestion? How is that going to be regulated?
Councilmember Pulver?
I mean, the timeline is whenever. I guess that's the problem, is that when people think about the fact that they want to get money now, then, that's something that maybe we can add to it and just say, hey, if we need to, say requests for current budget year have to be, I don't know, by December, for the following year, that's appropriate. You can add that in there.
It may be just a clarification, and Councilmember Delpez could clarify this. I think if it's a city-sponsored event, which is like Cherry Days, that may be to a different level than, because I agree with Councilmember Delpez that expending money on non-sponsored events, not partnering events, but anything that's not city sponsored ought to go through that sifting process of, is it health and safety related to the community? So maybe there's, to address your good question is, maybe depending on which category it fits into, because I think there's probably pretty limited city-sponsored events versus partnering or support. And so once again, I think as the council reads through what Councilmember Daup has mentioned, it's pretty specific and probably should apply to those other two categories. Just a thought. Councilmember Daup.
And just about the Cherry Days funding, I'm supportive of funding Cherry Days at this point. I believe we have it in our budget this year, of course. I believe that the anticipation has been for the last couple of years that the committee will spin this thing into more and more success. And as it becomes more and more successful, it becomes more and more profitable. And I honestly believe that this year will be better off than last year. And so the idea is, and I don't know where we're at on the idea of if they want to do a 501c3 eventually, but the idea is they will offset a lot of these costs that we've incurred in the past by it becoming more and more successful. So that's kind of, I think, where I am. And I think a lot of people here would probably agree that, we're okay with helping fund Cherry Days. We've been doing it for a very long time, but we're hoping that it can be less and less funding based off of the success of the event.
Yeah, I believe that it was even talked about creating a 501c3. Here's the problem I see, just speaking very frankly. I think it's going to get harder and harder to get people to volunteer to the level of what we've seen here because of some of the, I don't even know how to say this, but some of the negative comments that have been made about people who are strictly volunteering their time and their effort to make this a better place. In fact, at some point in time, I've looked at this as an event that should bring our community together. And if it continues to be divisive, I think the council has to ask the question, is this something that the city should be putting money into if it's not uniting the community versus dividing the community? But that's surely your call. But I think it's going to be more and more difficult. And I don't know, Councilmember Barker, am I off base?
Nope, you're right on base.
Councilmember Barker has kind of been involved in leading this effort with Cherry Days, to which thank you so much, because I know this is a big event and time, and appreciate you taking on that assignment. But that's the concern, as this thing is now built up to the level it is in the city and the expectation, and finding people that'll commit. Because as you'll recall, we set this up to where it kind of rotated through, so we had experience in there. So anyway, just a thought. And Councilmember Barker seems to think that's something we need to address. But it's become quite divisive. So, okay. Anything else, Councilmember Pulver?
No, do you want us to, I can dig into it too, is the fact that defining where we are currently in the current budget as to what, if you want me, I can work with Jamie, or technically you're the liaison.
Yeah, no, that's fine, because I think in development of the policy, I just want to make sure, because the budget was put together before the policy was.
Yeah, I didn't expect us to revamp
mean?
things just because of this, but yeah, this is.
Well, it's just a tentative budget, right?
Correct.
So I would, why don't you just check in with Jamie and see if what we have in the budget kind of complies with not only this, but what's in the handbook there. And then we can go from there. But I think, maybe a few tweaks, like Councilmember Watson said, maybe putting a dates in here, and then if the council so feels where they want to, put the sifting through on Councilmember Dalpaz's part. I think you have a list here of sponsored.
And that was a first cut, by the way. I think it was
Right.
it was a John brain dump, I think is what that was, but not.
But if you look at that list of partnering, um, those are historical, right, John? Or those ones that we would anticipate?
So this is just a list of everyone I could think of who we've interacted with in some way, including nonprofits and residents who get a discount on facilities over others. And so it was just the first cut. I can, like, a good example is YCC isn't on this because we technically give them money, but it's not an actual activity. And so it's not, I didn't know if it would qualify as a sponsorship or not. So it's just a preliminary list to have the council talk about.
So the YCC is not on there anywhere, John?
Correct, because they're not, the way the policy is written, it's dealing with events, and the YCC doesn't do an event for us. They do individual.
Yeah, so I'm wondering how that would fit into, once again, Councilmember Dalpaz's comment that when we expend funds, taxpayer funds, for other things that are not sponsored, that it goes through that process of we ought to be spending money for the benefit and safety of the community. If none of those are on there, because I'm looking at this like partner, I'm going down there and we have like, just going down through there, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, 30 year, what is different between that and the YCC in regards to a event versus a partner or whatever?
So we have a partnership with them up at McGriff Park where the parking lot is on their ground. And so they allow the public to utilize it. In exchange, they get to utilize the Bowery at no expense at McGriff Park. So that's the kind of partnership where there's not an exchange of money per se. It's more of a free use of facilities.
But Mayor, I think you bring up a good point. If it's not an event, but we're still giving, or the citizens are providing money to somebody. And that's, yeah, I don't know. We'll have to look at that, John. I'm not
And
sure.
like it wouldn't be hard to put the YCC on here because we do give them money, and it's probably closer to like the stuff we do with the McGriff Park stuff and the Weber Drug Task Force and things like that. But we do actually give them money, so they would belong in the sponsored category.
Some of these are contractual arrangements, I'm assuming, like maybe with Pineview Water, with the McGriff Park. Some of those are contractually in place. Is that right, John, or not?
Yes, some of them are, yes.
So, I guess if it's contractually in place, the council would probably have to look at those contracts before they're put in place. And is that a sponsorship versus a partnership, I guess? On some of those things you mentioned. Don't want to get too technical, but if we're going to kind of sift through that and say, if we're going to spend taxpayers' money other than from city-sponsored events.
But
I know we're just talking in generalities tonight, so.
Well, no, I did get technical. I think that's the whole point. I mean, if there's details in here that we need to add, I think, bring it on. I think this is, while it's a start, it's pretty darn close. So, I mean, if there's little tweaks we need to make it, but I think it should be a policy. It should be a city policy. I don't know if that's the right word, but that this is how city staff can go, oh, wait, I got to go do this, and something to go follow. That's the goal.
Because I think next week, we're going to have a work session. And for instance, I'm looking here and Council Member Watson and John and myself mentioned to have this discussion about the Northview seniors. Is that a partnership? Is that a sponsorship? But I want the council to understand before we enter into a contract with Weber Human Services, what we're committing to on the new outline of things. So we'll go through that in detail, but I just turn it to the council if they have any questions. I don't know about all the details here, but once again, I'll say I strongly support Councilmember Dalpaz's statement about when we're spending taxpayer money over and above what this is sponsored by the city, that it should go through and meet the qualifications of the handbook.
Yep.
Councilmember Watson?
So this list of partners, if I'm reading this right, the partners don't receive funds from the city. So these wouldn't be prioritized over something of health and safety like the YCC, because the YCC got put in the city sponsored category.
I think there are some that receive money. For instance, on the task force, John, we either have to, or the SWAT, whichever one, you can correct me here, we either have to provide an officer or we have to pay money into that to meet our
Yeah.
obligation.
But-
I'm looking at, for instance, the Chalk It Up it was on there. I think the city has historically given them $5,000. The Northview seniors, we give $60,000 plus per year. So I think it's might be intermixed, Councilmember Watson. To your point, there's numerous ones on there that we don't give money to. But there are some that we do.
So on the Just to Break the Chalk It Up, they've been moved in theory down to this because there isn't any more money to give them. And then the Northview seniors, we don't actually give them the check, although we do provide this facility for free. And the mayor's exactly right. It's a lot of money a year that really supports their programming. And then Weber Drug is one of those goods that's kind of confusing because there's a contract, but we also let them use our facilities for training. Just like the Northview Fire, we don't have a contract with them, but if they need a room or they need to, bust holes in the police station before we tear it down, we let them do that kind of stuff. So my hope is that everyone who's under partner is not under the budget this year getting any cash, but they will, as was talked about in the policy, be getting either free use of a facility, which may even include some employee setup time. I think we put in the policy 10 hours was the idea because, it's never 100% free to the city because there is always employee time to clean up after sometimes or to just check and make sure the facility was used the right way. So, but anyone on this list can be nixed or we can add to it. A good example is I didn't even think of putting the YCC on this list, and now we have. So there's bound to be others that should be on this list.
And I guess some of the events that we get, what was it, $1 per citizen? So I mean, that comes from ramp programs. Are we talking, that's separate from what you're talking about, Mayor?
In theory, that's part of the money that's going into these
Okay.
sponsored programs.
Okay, just making sure.
And I think what we've requested is that money be budgeted out each year on what's anticipated it'll be spent for. Obviously subject to change, but once again, I think it'd be well for the council to know what that money's being spent on. Councilmember Watson?
Another question. I assume the whole point of doing this is so it can be streamlined so that we don't need to ask every single person or ask the council every time one of these come back and they've been doing it for 20 years or whatever. So that's the point, right? That's the hope, is that we just vote now and then they're good, right? Unless there's a change.
Once we nail down what, because there's a couple of adds to this and I don't think we're voting on anything tonight, but yeah.
I guess Councilmember Watson is, I would say everything is subject to change. because you may find yourself in a real budget crunch one year. And you may be faced with making adjustments to that list or raising property taxes, but you should probably have that option, and you probably should review those, not every week or every day or every council meeting, but maybe prior to the budget session. Because things, as you know, we're in a fast changing world. So I think just because they're once approved, but that's surely the council's call. It's like Councilmember Dalpaz, at some point in time, Cherry Days may fall off, right? If they go to a 501c3, they may move down to partner versus sponsor. So I don't see major often changes, but I do think the council should review how each year prior to the budget, how much money is being spent on these events, and if it's the same type of expenditure they'd like to make. But I don't see, you know, like you're saying, having to requalify, so to speak, on a regular basis, if that makes sense. But I do think if the council should have that right to determine expenditure of funds each year. Councilmember Severing.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just thinking, maybe what we could do on a list like this is designate what exactly define like sponsor. So a sponsor is always going to receive money. Is a partner not going to receive money? They're just going to receive, you know, kind of in kinds kind of support. Is that somewhere on that list? I'm trying to remember.
It's in the,
It's in the
in-
top.
Policy.
It's kind of in the policy up top.
Okay.
If you look at it, yeah.
I couldn't remember whether it was there. I thought it was, but maybe on that list, we could actually clarify it.
Well, yeah. City funds are expended to support these activities. That's sponsored. City equipment, buildings utilized for free, employees, you know, so yeah. That's the differentiation.
Anything else we can help you with, Councilmember Pulver? Any additional input?
No, so we'll work back through and so two things, two actions I took was to deadline for request sifting. I'll ask JD exactly wording. And then try to figure out if there's any other not actual like YCC type thing where they're not actually, it's not an event, but is there other folks out there that we do something for money wise that may or may not be an event? And so, and then that kind of rolls into figuring out what the city is paying for and or services, just so that we can have a better idea of what get the arms around where we're at.
I think to Council Member Watson's point too, and I don't recall seeing that in there, I could have missed it, that it will be reviewed, each budget says, and is subject to change, so that, you know, if people don't assume that it's a permanent thing, most likely won't be dramatic changes, but could be, just so that, you know, those lists, somebody could move from a partner to a sponsor, vice versa, just so that the participant might be aware of the fact it could change.
You're talking about reviewing on a yearly basis. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, once again, I just think it would be good in the budget process for Jamie to outline, you know, if we have $40,000 in there or $50,000, where that fits on that list and who it is, so that it's very clear at the beginning of each budget session.
Yeah, and so Mayor, in the beginning preamble, I kind of said that. I said, review the list noted at number 1 to ensure the protocols noted below are followed and are being reviewed on a regular basis. So that's sort of in there, but I think what you're asking is specific as to when the budget
I don't know what the
cycle.
definition of regular is, but you know, I think it needs to be tied in. I guess the point I'm trying to make here, council, and it's once again your call, is this is a financial commitment the council's making, and that ought to be transparent. And so if it can be tied into the budgeting process, that might be appropriate because it is taxpayer money, right?
So define regular,
Well,
regularly reviewed, define that.
Just in conjunction, maybe in conjunction with the budgeting process each year, or something that simple. But once again, your
Sort of-
call.
Sort of in there, but yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Councilmember Severin?
I was just gonna say, thank you, Mayor, by the way. I didn't see Family Promise on there. Was Family Promise on that list?
It should be.
I think it's probably not all inclusive. I think John did the best job he could. And I think, so if you review that list and see something that's not on there, please let John know so it can go into the proper category. And Councilmember Pulver, thank you for your work on that. And John, thank you. Appreciate your comments, council. I know it's not a huge amount of money, but I used to say $1 million here, $1 million there, pretty soon it adds up. But a city government, 1,000 here, 1,000 there, pretty soon it adds up. So, okay.
So Mayor, do you want to give me a deadline on that?
The line?
Deadline?
I trust you'll get it done quickly. Because I do think prior to the tentative budget, you should know that it's the things that are in there in compliance with the policy that you're thinking about adapting. So, okay. And I think that is June 11th. So sometime prior to that. Sometime prior to that for Jamie's sake. Okay, let's move on to item number 7. Mr. Espinosa, who's our Assistant City Manager and Public Works Director, would like to discuss with us an action to approve a study on the transportation utility fee. Mr. Espinosa?
Council, we talked about it during the budget season, but we said we would bring it back. It was just discussing that transportation utility fee. During the budget session, we asked to approve about $110,000 for a study to be done to approve the funding to start this utility fee. It would encompass the a road analysis, which would be about $40,000, and then the other 60 to 70,000 would be the study itself that an engineering firm would come and basically build out a 20-year plan for us of, what we would need to do and how we would need to fund our road projects going forward. And so with that, we just wanted, that's what we're here for today, is just to bring this back to you. Again, because it's such a big amount, we're looking for a commitment to actually raise or do a fee if we do this study. We're finding that, if it's $110,000 to do this, we're at least looking for some kind of commitment, at least $5 probably to start that fee. From our inside analysis, we think that fee will actually probably be around $15. That's where we're projecting that the engineering firm will come back at, is about a $15 fee. And so it's a big pill to swallow, and it's a big ask to have an extra $5 a month to put towards our roads. And so that's why we wanted to bring this back to you, because if we're not, if you guys are not interested in doing something like that, then we almost feel like the study wouldn't be worth it at that point. To start, go ahead, Mayor. Oh.
Well, I was just looking at your very nicely done graph here.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think is very informative and kind of talks about the kicking the can down the road versus dealing with the situation.
Absolutely.
I think it'll give the council some information on really what the fee has to be.
So we took trending from the last 5 years, and we built this graph. The orange line in the middle there indicates where the BNC road funds are coming in at. it gives you an idea that those have been increasing about 20% over the last 5 years.
Okay, for the new council members, would you maybe explain B and C road funds just so they're clear on that?
So it's state funding that is given to the city based on a couple of things. How many miles of road that we have. So we get a percentage of state funding based on how many miles of road that we have in our city. So the increase you can see there is because we've slowly increased how many roads we have in our city. And so if we stay on that same kind of trend, I mean, like I said, it's grown about 20% there. But the construction costs have been going up about 60%, almost 60%. So from in 2019, we went back and actually took the same quantities of work that we're doing this year in 2024 that we just got bids on a couple weeks ago. And we took that same quantity, did all the same analysis, and back in 19, it would have cost about $388,000 to do the 5 main things that we do to our roads, which are overlays, asphalt patching, milling, and chip seal. And we took that same stuff this year is going to cost us $17,000. So, I mean, it's a big increase that we're seeing in construction costs, and we're just not keeping up with that trend of the B and C road fund. So you're actually, I mean, so you can see where that trending is, that gap is getting bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where we're not going to be able to keep up. And we're going to get massive failures and not be able to pay for it. And so that's why we're asking to do the study. We're asking for a commitment to do at least a minimum of $5, unless the study comes back with less. And it could, but we don't think so. We think that study is going to show a significant amount more, that it's probably going to be closer to the $15 range.
So Dave, if I'm reading this graph right, in 2025, the gap is $735,000 between B and C road funds versus what we think needs to be done minimally, because this is not, I mean, as the council can confirm, every road in our city has a major pothole.
Yes.
According to social media.
Correct.
Every road has major potholes, right?
Yes.
And we know that we got behind for a period of time in keeping up. So I just did a quick calculation, and just at $735,000 gap, that's like $10. And that's not really even catching up, is it? I mean, that's just kind of maintaining.
Correct. That's maintaining kind of
what we're
that
doing
curve
now.
that we're trying to do right now.
And then it jumps to 816,000. So I guess, council, you need to decide, because you can see the longer we wait, the more inflation, the bigger the gap comes, because it's growing at 20% a year. Now, we hope that'll calm down. But, that's the question. If something is better than nothing, but then do we just get further behind? I liken it unto the police station. Probably 4 or 5 years ago, we could have built that thing for probably half of what it costs to build today. That same situation is happening with our roads. But I'm also conscientious of the fact that this burden falls upon our citizens, in addition to increase in water fund, property tax. But it's the reality of the world, right? That we're facing. And I mean, there's not even any money in the budget for Christmas decorations or flowers, let alone fixing the road. So I just throw that out in regards to, do we deal with the problem head on or do we kick it down the road? That's surely your call. Councilmember Severing?
Thank you, Mayor. The one thing that I've been pleased with our council over the last few years is we've really, really tried to be proactive. And I don't think we really have a lot of options on this, Mayor. So it seems like, and at least I would vote that we move forward with the study, knowing that it's not just a good idea, it's kind of a necessity.
Councilmember Dalpas?
Yeah, I see your point on the, just in your little rough guesstimate of what it would take by next year, that it would be a $10 fee per resident per month on their, tacked onto their bill. And, I think, it sounds painful to raise it 5, then to 10, but it also sounds painful to raise it all at once as well. So, but I'm of the attitude that if we're short a certain amount, we need to kind of rip it off like a Band-Aid and probably approve it at $10 tonight is kind of the way that I'm feeling. We did have a good email from a resident. We're always very aware that, there are people on difficult incomes, especially our senior citizens. They can struggle to make ends meet. And it would be interesting if we could explore, and this resident kind of got my ideas spinning, and I'm sure the rest of us, if you saw that email, if there was a way to try to limit the impact on that category of individuals in the city, so maybe we could put the fee as $10 per month for citizens, and then have some sort of, I hope it wouldn't be too difficult administratively, but it could be more of an opt-in. So if a senior citizen wants to opt out of that full fund or that full fee, they could come into the city offices and sign a thing that says, this or that. Just a thought.
I appreciate that thought. John, I'm going to turn to you on this on two things. I don't know what if the law requires that, to charge some and not others fully. I don't know either. So that was Councilmember Dalpaz's point. And then could you just inform the council and those that are here tonight what the requirements are that, the courts just dealt with this issue, right?
Yeah.
And there were certain things that they said, well, if you want this to count as a fee instead of a tax, there's certain things you have to do to support that. Could you just briefly comment on those two issues, Councilmember Dalpaz's comment, and then why we'd have to do a study? Because it's obviously we have problems with our roads, and just again to Councilmember Dalpaz's point about dealing with the problem. If you went $5 this year, it wouldn't be $10 next year, right? Because you've got the catch-up thing.
That whole year.
Yeah, and it just keeps growing ahead of you. So anyway, John, could you address those two issues, please?
Yeah, so they both were kind of dealt with in the study. That Pleasant Grove is the city that was sued, and the court said it's not a tax. So the lawsuit was, is it a fee or is it a tax? Because if it's a tax, it needs to be enacted a different way than if it's a fee. The court said it's a fee, but we're not going to weigh in on whether or not it's justified or whether it's appropriate to the charge. And so they basically said, hey, district court, talk about this and decide if it's fair and if it's equitable, if the fee is correct. It was unique in their fee structure. They actually, in theory, charge commercial users less than residential users, not as an actual dollar amount, but in an impact. So they basically recognized that commercial users were paying for far less trips than what the study said they could charge, because the council felt that the burden on the commercial would have been way too high. I think they would have been paying $45, $50 and up a month, where residents were paying $8 or $9 a month. And so but the court didn't weigh in on that. But I do think it is a little problematic to differentiate two groups, because you're delving this line of fee versus tax. The state does have a tax policy for people who are income restricted, and seniors, for example, that people can apply for and then get their property taxes reduced. And so it has been done, but it's been done in the category of taxes, not in the categories of fees. That being said, fees are quite a bit more flexible than taxes, and so the council might have that. But we'd really want to make sure it was careful and that it was administered very fairly to anyone who would qualify, because it could be a tricky thing. And then the hard part about it is typically when you reduce a fee, you either have to find another source for the funding, or you have to pay for it out of the general fund. So a good example is if you took a third of our residents and said you only have to pay $5 a month instead of 10, then we need to find a way to come up with that other $5, which actually adds up pretty quickly. You know, it'd be easily $500,000 a year of fee waivers, depending on, you know, if they qualified. And so just be something we'd want to evaluate when we bring the feedback for official approval. Because the one thing the court did say is that you have to be able to prove it. And then the subsequent legislation says you have to be able to justify your fee. So before we can start charging it, we need to do the studies, or we would be at risk of a lawsuit and likely having to refund or, you know, having our program kind of fall apart.
Okay, so two issues that I think I heard Councilmember Severing kind of made a motion on proceeding with the study. I think what Dave is looking for too is a commitment to, don't know exactly what the number is tonight, but the council's commitment to invoke a fee if the study supports it. I think that's what Dave is looking for. So did I interpret that right, Councilmember Severing, that you made a motion? Could you just restate that for the council's clarification, what your motion is?
Wasn't technically a motion. It was just my feelings that we should move toward that, but would you like a motion?
Well, if you're prepared to make one.
Sure, you bet. Mayor, I would move that we approve a study evaluating the need for a transportation utility fee in North Ogden.
Would that be the whole 110, Dave? I think you said we could break that into two components.
Yeah,
Just trying to, so it'd be for both, the 110,000. Okay, and Councilmember Severing, could you add to that if you'd so like, the council's commitment to invoke that fee at the appropriate time? Not a stated number, but.
Sure. Realizing that at the conclusion of the study, we have the flexibility to determine a transportation utility fee that would be equal to the need for road repair.
Is that good, John?
Yeah, and it does, council, this will come back before this same group. And so you're not obligated, you know, there's nothing about this. You can't force yourself to agree to something in the future. But you are basically giving us a commitment that we can go out and spend the money and that you'll at least come back with some sort of a fee to help offset that cost. Although technically you don't have to, I guess is what I'm saying.
Is that?
We're just asking for you to give us a strong thumbs up with this motion so that we know we can spend the money and we're not just throwing it down the drain.
But you don't need me to amend anything in my motion.
No.
Okay, so you've heard Councilmember Severing's motion. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councilmember Watson. Is there any further questions or discussions? Councilmember Watson, let's go with you.
So if this engineering firm comes back and says we recommend a 15% increase, what would that do to that third line there, the offset line, how far we are off? And at what point does it become zero? Or I hope that's the point.
So the number that they will recommend from the study is to get you to zero probably within 10 years.
Okay.
So that's usually that's the number they'll come back with.
And if we didn't want to do the recommendation for some reason, just thinking outside the box for a second, we're not obligated to follow their recommendation. At that time, we can make the decision, right?
Correct.
Got it.
Correct. I think they're just looking for some direction that they're not flushing $110,000 down. But, you know, it could come back at 25 and you could say, no, we can't afford that. We're going to go with 10 or we're going to go with whatever. So you'll have that flexibility. Councilmember Pulver, you also had a question.
So the 110 is funded, right? That was in the tentative budget? Okay. Figured that, it's making sure. And then I don't remember where I saw this. I tried to do a quick internet search while everybody's chatting, but I believe Ogden City had to bond to get their roads back up to snuff with my
Sidewalks.
Sidewalks, okay. Was it N roads too?
So we've actually had 2 cities in the county that have got to the point where it's got so bad that they've had to bond.
Okay, and I couldn't remember if I heard that from, I swear I heard that from somebody in Ogden. Anyway, and then I guess the other thing was on the graph itself, was that you made it for a 2.75 mile road? Is that what it's based off of? Because I see that in the bottom left, but I didn't know if that was
So
cost.
we have 55 miles of road.
Right.
And we like to do something on them every 20 years.
Right.
So that's just how many miles we need to touch every year.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just making sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just to clarify that, John, that's maintenance. That's not getting them up to snuff where the road study said it should be.
Yeah,
This
correct.
This is maintaining. Yes, if you saw the number that it would take to get our roads up to the recommended snuff from the last study, we'd probably have to be calling some of Councilmember Barker's friends from down the road here to come and issue CPR. But additionally, I've asked Dave, and he'll come back with this on what the potential amount we need to repair the sidewalks we have that are not in there. And so you'll see that number too, which is pretty hefty.
So, yeah, and I guess my point overall was the fact that we need to have a good basis for what the number finally is, because I mean, we did a good job, I thought, on when the utilities, the fees that are going up for all those other ones, that very specific. And so when I just hate throwing numbers out, because to me as an engineer, I don't want to see just a number, you know, where did that come from? You know, so that to me, I need a solid thing before I can say yes or no to whatever it is. Thanks.
And Councilmember Pulver, they do have a schedule that shows which roads have been touched in the last period of time and those that need to be touched. And they do have the cost estimates because we're consistently dealing with that. So I know they have that information and it would be available, and most likely will be part of the study as it comes back. So, okay. All right, any other questions? If not, this will be a roll call vote. Let's start with you, Councilmember Severing,
Yes.
Councilmember Barker,
Yes.
Councilmember Pulver,
Yes.
Councilmember Watson,
Yes.
and Councilmember Dowpaz.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We now have on our agenda tonight, Ryan Santoro is going to make her initial presentation to the council. And so we're grateful that she's here and to make a presentation. Go ahead, Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. North Ogden City is anticipating an annexation coming our way, and the surveyor of this said annexation had asked if North Ogden City wanted to include the parcels that surround this property into the annexation. And so that's something that we wanted to bring before you guys to discuss and ultimately make a decision. The recently enacted House Bill 330 requires that unincorporated islands within counties of the first class to be automatically annexed. And given the direction that the state is heading with annexations, we wanted to ask if North Ogden City wants to require that all unincorporated island parcels be included in any future annexation petitions that come to the city. It's staff's recommendation to approve that, as it'll just streamline the administrative processes and the way that the state's going. Ultimately, it's going to come down our way as well, we would think. So that's what I'd like you guys to discuss tonight.
Okay, any questions for Ryan? I know the county commission has inquired of me several times. They tell me, and I haven't verified this, but after looking at the map, I don't think it's too far off. North Ogden has more islands that are in the county than any other city in the county. And it's really interesting because I told them, well, when you're willing to pay the $2,500 to get a survey done, people might be interested in annexing in. But what's their motivation to pay $2,500 for a survey and then be subject to city taxes when in essence they're getting all the services of a North Ogden resident pretty much without paying any taxes in the North Ogden? You know, some people annex in for political reasons.
Suckers.
But, you know, what she's talking about here is basically a forced annexation of these properties into the city because of the recent bill that was passed in the Senate, or in the legislature, I should say. So any questions for Ryan on this particular issue? Councilmember Dowpaz?
So these surrounding properties haven't come to us and requested the annexation, obviously, but the Severing property is going to come and request that annexation, I'm sure, soon. But so it sounds like it was House Bill 330, you said? Can you explain? I wasn't understanding that bill so great. Can you explain it again to help me try to understand it?
Sure, I can do my best.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I read through the bill, and so it's only requiring counties of the first class. So that's Salt Lake County right now. And all of those will automatically be annexed into the adjacent city. Any other details on it? I'm not very sure. John, do
Okay.
you have any clarity?
So it gave the option for the other counties to force these islands into the city. And so what the surveyor who did this, you can see it says North Ogden City annexation area, this 20.5 acres.
Mhm.
They identified that these properties out here on Washington, the Longhurst, the Hills, the LaFleurs, and the Hill Family Trust are not in the city. And so should they come in at the same time, because they'll be the last remaining annexed pieces. The Severing property came in last year. Goodwin Auto Sales is in the city. And so they're just asking, do these need to come in? There is still one to the south, the Sharon Hill property that isn't annexed yet, but is large enough that when it needs to develop, it will have to annex because the county won't provide them any services. And the bill basically says cities can force them in, but the requirements to annex are still the same, which is, to the mayor's point, $2,500 for a study, and some other things like that to identify the property. In this scenario, because this other property is looking at annexing in, it's not that much more to include these 4 properties on the plat and just bring them into the city under that statute that says the city can basically force them. It's just now a political question on, does the city want to start a policy of saying, anytime we do an annexation, if it's touching another island, then the city will require that to come in as well. And if the council is agreeable to this, just based on your discussion tonight, we would come back with a ordinance that would essentially say that, tied to our annexation ordinance, that says, if you annex, you have to bring in your neighbors as well. So.
Does it happen immediately?
Microphone. No, sorry.
You have a comment, Councilmember Watson?
Does the annex happen immediately?
It would happen when it was completed. It's usually a 90-day process to annex property.
So
Councilmember Pulver?
the code, I think we were kind of talking about this before, is do they have to, once they're annexed, then there's a whole bunch of other things they have to do on their own to get to city compliance? Or no? Like they still have they're not hooked to the sewer, that's fine. If they have certain other things, they do their own trash, that's fine. Or are they forced to do those things?
I'd have John answer that, but I think once they're a resident of the city, they're subject to most of the things. I'm not sure we force them to get trash if they, but John can answer that question better.
Yeah, so there are certain things they would have to follow. A good example is there's a property in the city that's not annexed, specifically because the owner raises hogs, and our ordinance doesn't allow the raising of hogs, and so they keep it in the county because the county lets you. So, so there would be some compliance issues, though not anything that you wouldn't expect to see in the RE20 zone, as far as weeds and animals and things like that.
But they would have to hook to North Ogden water.
It's not required they would, but we would enforce sewer. So if they're on septic and there's a sewer line within 300 feet, then they'd have to connect to the sewer line.
On their own dime.
Yeah.
Okay.
The state does have, or the county does have some, not scholarships, but some grants to help with that. But the grant does not cover the full cost.
And this is future, obviously. I mean, if somebody's living in their house, they don't want to move and yada, yada, and they keep it in their family and they want to stay in the county. What we're forcing, obviously these properties, unless you're sticking your head in the sand, these will become commercial in the future. And so if we don't annex them now, we're annexing them later. That's kind of, if it was someplace else, I think I'd be a little bit more, but what we're talking about is automatic. That's what we're talking about right now, right?
And we're talking about two policies. One is just generally, do we want an ordinance that requires it? And then the other one might be the specifics are, do you require everybody, or do you say the council just needs to weigh in on each parcel? Because commercial property, to your point, the county don't typically won't approve those uses. And so that forces the owner into the city. But we have a lot of just random parcels that are between us and the county, or that are just in the city, that they do not want to annex in. So.
Okay.
I'm not super comfortable, forcing people to annex in. So I have to digest this a little bit, but it definitely is interesting to think of a property that basically takes advantage of all the North Ogden City services because of them being surrounded by all other North Ogden properties. But I have to understand more of, I'm gonna have to read this House Bill 330 through to understand it a little bit better, because it sounds like it's Salt Lake County that's the one as a Class A or Class 1 county that's forcing this, and the other counties are not necessarily held to that same standard at this point. So I would be kind of nervous, and I'm always nervous about the off chance that we put an ordinance in place that says whenever somebody annexes, the adjacent properties have to as well, because there's got to be a unique property out there that won't make sense, that we will kick ourselves and say, oh man, we have that ordinance that required us to do this. And even though it doesn't make sense, we have an ordinance that says we do it. That just makes me a little bit uneasy.
Sorry. But the point, I think what you're trying to make is, in this current instance, if you want to, if say for example, this goes through without all those islands and then they do want to, then it's $2,500 each property. So the only advantage is to them is that they don't have to pay that $2,500. And I think for the most part, at least they should be informed. Is that, to me, that was one of those things that, hey, this, next door neighbor's doing it. Do you want to do it? And if not, by the way, in whatever amount of years, you're probably gonna have to do it anyways, and you're gonna have to pay $2,500. What do you think? To me, that's something I think you want to at least inform them of. So I don't know if that's.
I like that approach. Try to get in touch with them and explain to them that
You're
they
saving money.
can save money by getting in on this survey, right now, or they'll have to pay for their own in the future. They won't be able to cost share with this individual that's annexing right now.
Councilmember Watson.
So if we don't force it now, then are we waiting for the legislation to change or create a new bill so that so you're saying at some point they will be forced? Is that a legislation change?
There's no way to say that for sure. This House bill has just changed, and it just so happened when, on the curtails of getting notice that I'm going to be receiving this annexation petition and the county reaching out, asking if we do want to include these parcels. So just thinking that the way the state might be heading with this House bill, with just a bigger county and with how much growth is happening in the state, we could get ahead of this. It would make annexation cheaper for these neighboring parcels, and it would streamline administration processes, but we have no crystal ball. We don't know when this is coming, but that's the reason why we brought this before the council today.
Could I make a suggestion? Perhaps I get with the county commissioners because it's mandatory for class 1 counties, optional, but counties can do that. And it wouldn't surprise me if the county is looking at this seriously, because they continue to tell me North Ogden has more islands that are in the county versus the city. So maybe I could see where the county's heading with this. And if they're going to implement this as a requirement, then we know where we have to go, right? And we can discuss that. I could get with them this week, and in our work session next week, we could maybe, I could update you on where the county might be heading with that, because if I heard you right, Ryan, you indicated it's mandatory for class 1, but other counties have the option to adopt. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mayor. It's not mandatory for other counties.
But they do have the option to adopt if they're not a class 1 county. Is that right?
John?
Yeah, they have the option. We can use the state ordinance if we'd like to.
Yeah. Well, let's see what the county's planning on doing, because like I say, they know we have more islands in the city than anywhere else, and I'll report back to you.
I was just gonna say, here's the map that shows exactly what you're talking about, Mayor. Every one of these little dark spots in the yellow is an island. And if you look at Harrisville, you can see there's one on the border, Ogden, and then Pleasant View, they have one. But that's the reason that we're being talked to.
That Harrisville one is taking care of itself right now. I think that's where all the 200 townhomes were recently approved. Scroll down to the south. That big property by, oh, never mind. Sorry, I thought that was a Harrisville. That's us. Okay. My bad.
Okay, is that Councilmember Watson? Did you have another question or comment?
I was just curious, would it make it somehow easier on a commercial, I don't know, I guess if there was someone that would probably be in the commercial zone and wanted to sell their property to an investor, would this make it easier on that investor if it was already zoned? So it would make it more appealing to those investors who might want to come in on Washington.
And probably more valuable, but that's their choice. Councilmember Barker, please.
There's only, in my opinion, and maybe I'm wrong, there's only a few parcels that would be in commercial. The majority of them are not going to be in commercial.
Okay.
And my other question, so the 2,500 is only the surveying. Who's gonna pay the other fees? Because that's, when I annexed in, it was almost $6,000 it cost me to annex in. So who's gonna pay the other 3,500? Is it gonna be each individual homeowner, or is the city gonna help foot the bill?
Most likely the individual homeowner, right? That's kind of been,
Well, that's,
If there's a house there, because some of those properties, I don't think it's a livable house.
The way it works is it's almost doesn't size of the parcel doesn't matter. It matters a little bit depending on how many corners your property has because of how long the description is for the legal notice. But annexing these 20 acres as opposed to a half acre would probably almost be $6,000. So adding another 2 acres to it wouldn't increase it that much, although the point is valid on how do you make the developer pay for the private neighbor or make the neighbor pay if they don't want to.
okay, any other questions? Thank you, Ryan. I will report back to the council at the work session next week on my discussion with the county. At public comments, okay, if you could just stay with us, I'd appreciate it. Okay, we'll move on then. Mr. Call, you wanted to talk to us about the results of the flash vote on Parks and Recreation.
Yeah.
Informational, correct?
Yeah. So, council, this just put together a little slide to talk about the survey that we just completed. We had 307 responses, which in a statistical analysis means there's a plus or minus 6% margin of error. And we also included open-ended questions as well as in each individual multiple choice question, there was always the option to provide open-ended discussion. With our population of just over 22,500 folks, with the plus or minus, the study says that between 13,400 and 16,000 residents use the North Ogden trails. 12,000 to 14,700 use playgrounds. This one was interesting to me, the 8,200 to the 10,900 residents use North Shore. And that could be once, that could be all summer long. And then the other one, I know it's been a hot topic, is the skate park. So 1,000 to 3,600 are using the skate park. Residents, we asked a question about when they're not recreating in North Ogden City, where are they going? The majority lakes and reservoirs. Then trails was right close behind. And then individual indoor recreation centers, specific playgrounds like Smith's Family Park and others were mentioned. And then sports fields, I'm assuming to follow their kids to activities in Pleasant View or Harrisville or wherever. And then this is kind of the same thing, a list of the items that the residents would like more of. Trails, parks, other. There was a question or a comment on that. And so I'll go through the word cloud in a little bit, and then playgrounds was fourth. But it was an interesting survey. And anybody can access it as soon as the survey closes, the results get published immediately. That's one of the things that the group we work with believes in, is that, you know, everything should just be 100% transparent immediately. And so it's really good the way it works. But one thing that most people don't realize is they'll just jump on here and they'll scroll through the questions and be like, oh, you know, look, 69.5 or 65.9% of our folks use trails that responded to the survey. And I think it's interesting going back to that plus or minus 6%. That means that out of the 22,000 people, that's where we start getting the close to 16,000 people are potentially using the trails. So it's not just the, I'll flip it over here really quick. The table, it's not just 199 people using it. That 199, because it's a random sampling, is actually reflective of over 10,000 people are using our trails. But you can go through and look at any of them. One of the things I think is most helpful in this discussion is you can come and click on a word like volleyball, and then it'll go down and pull the descriptions or the answers to the questions or the extra comments that said volleyball, and you can read the actual comments. You know, hey, they need lights at the sand volleyball courts. And then this isn't very descriptive, but just volleyball at North Ogden Elementary. I imagine that's something that they enjoy, or maybe the other. And so you can do that and play with it. If you close all the filtered, or if you let it just do all of them, you can see all the responses. So 25 people responded, you know, questions about dog park, or they went to the dog park, McGriff, Orton, things like that. But the dynamic I think is most fun to play with is if you go to filter responses and you change it from all responses to this panel of questions. You can look at the first two are not super helpful because of the way we market our survey. It really only goes to locals, and we do distinguish a little bit between owner and non-owner, but you can see that it shows the mix of renters versus owner occupants and what they use. I always like the demographic one, and it'll let you change the age range. But if your goal is 45 as the median, then it'll now say, okay, so people 61 plus are only 44% of them, or 41% of them are using playgrounds. Sports fields only 25%. So you can start seeing which groups are utilizing. You need your little card. Dave's coming. But it just the survey gives you some interesting demographics, you know, and probably as expected, 30 and under, again, talking about North Shore, is the majority user of the aquatic center. Probably because that's the age where they're having kids, and even just playing with the age median from 45 to 50. So it moves your categories a little bit, and you can see some of these things start shifting and numbers start moving because you're starting to look at, instead of people younger than 30, you're now looking at people 35 and under. And so it's helping you start to understand where there's a break in use. But I thought it was it's an interesting tool that most people who jump on this survey site don't use. And then I just think it's a fun tool for it. The word cloud, those of you who aren't used to them, basically the bigger and the bolder the word is the more often it comes up in the comments. And so like McGriff was not discussed as often as Park was discussed. But again, you can click on McGriff and it'll say, well, hey, look, there's 15 responses that talk about McGriff, and you can read through them and see exactly what they're saying. And obviously you have to understand this question was talking about which specific parks or playgrounds are your favorite and why. And you can see McGriff, it's accessible by the trail. They like the track that they can ride bikes on. That's the one that has the pirate ship in it, the pirate playground. And then we typically have enjoyed doing this sort of a very open-ended, what other things would you like? And then people get to comment. It is a little, because it's more open, you'll get positives and negatives. People will call out things they don't like, as well as things they like. But if you have time, it's well worth spending some time reading through all of the questions or all of the responses, because I think it'll help better understand what our residents are thinking and how we can respond to them. These questions, I should have started with this, but we might suggest questions to the group, and then they go through and they filter them and work through them to try and eliminate the biased words, the words that may skew results. No survey is perfect, which is why you get that plus or minus 6%. But it's an interesting thing. One thing that, and I should have said this as well, but one of the things I really like is this member panel. So if you go down here, in theory, this is saying how many people had signed up to be a part of the survey prior to the survey being released versus how many signed up to it because they heard about the survey going out. So this will help you know that those individuals who signed up before might not have been skewed to the results, or they might not have been targeting just this. But because of this survey, we got, well, I'll just show it here. We got, 3 more people to sign up that used the North Ogden playgrounds. And so you can start seeing that we got 9 people to sign up to the survey just because it went out. And that will help us on the next survey that might not be about parks, or it might be about snow plowing or police. And it helps us get a more and more diverse group, which will give us better and better results to bounce ideas off of. We are getting ready to release that next survey that the council had asked for about recreation and recreation fees. I'm not sure we'll get it back in time for our discussion next week, but they're just in the final phases of reviewing the questions. And then, yeah. So what questions do you have about this survey, Counselor?
Councilmember Pulver?
I just noticed that they don't say how they're going to pay for it, but that was the one thing. But no, I thought that I looked through some of the results and thought it was good to see that it's and like you said, the thousands of people that are using the basically what we're paying a lot of money to either redo or maintain are being used. So that's good. I think that's one of the biggest things. And then some of the other things that are not as well used, we got to start thinking about that. But and things that they would like to see. I think that was kind of the big thing on what I saw, anyways.
And one thing I noticed in the survey results, trails were brought up a lot. And statistically, trails are much lower maintenance and initial cost for the city, especially if they're just dirt trails, so that might help guide some of our future decisions. Another thing I noticed isn't interesting from this survey is I didn't see a lot of people saying we want more parks, newer parks. I saw a lot of people saying upgrade the existing parks, but they weren't saying we want lots more acreage, lots more, which I thought was an interesting thing that came out of it as well. But I could have read things differently too. A lot of people also asked for a rec center, which is probably not in the budget. I'm just saying.
I guarantee there was a couple comments that said that we need more parks to the north, but I won't say who said that.
Yeah. Well, and that's, but that's true. But they're definitely, we need to balance parks a little more across the city because they're all kind of in the center.
And I think, Councilmember Pulver, we've tried to adopt that as we see development taking place on the north. I think the council's intentions is to speak with the developers in a trade-off between density and land for parks. So I think that's in place as that development takes on new homes in the city. I would also just compliment the council. I know not everybody was on there, but I think improving the trailhead, I think that is one of the most visited places in North Ogden. And I always said, it doesn't give the impression what North Ogden is about when we had porta potties. And so I compliment the council for their willingness to invest in the things that are used frequently. It will be interesting, John, as our residents talk about the trails with the government, right, in regards to the use of those trails as they put up no trespassing signs. Bureau of Reclamation, is that correct? That
yeah,
is their property is being managed by Pine View, and they're very concerned about the use of those trails around open canals, and it'll be quite interesting. Any other questions for Mr. Call in regards to the flash vote? Councilmember Delpaz.
Just an observation, I think the data can be difficult. Who knows how right on it is, to your point, but pretty eye-opening that more people than anyone as respondents said that they used trails And the reason that I say that that's eye-opening is because each year, in all the time that I've been on the council, we've always had a budget line item to get our playgrounds up to snuff, which I think is still very important. But it's interesting that I can't think of many situations in the last few years where we've allocated, a reasonable amount of money towards trails. And I know that we have the connection up by Mountain Road and we got the ramp grant for that and we're trying to figure out if we can make that all work. But just generally, it doesn't feel like we've had a huge focus on that. So these type of results are impactful and hopefully helpful to us in the future.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? All right, then we will move on to council member reports. And let me just start with a brief report on the finance department. Jamie was kind enough to send me the financial statements. As I look through those, I would say maybe the most alarming thing is the sales tax. I've always said 1 month doesn't make a trend. 2 months may start a trend, but if you're in 3 months of sales tax declines, you're in a trend. This last month, do you have the sales tax, John? For
Pulling it
those
up
who
real
haven't
quick.
seen it or would like to see it. Our reliance on sales tax is pretty heavy. We anticipated when the tentative budget was approved that we were thinking we'd be 200,000 ahead of what we projected. If the things happen like they did last month, that will vanish, which will cause a relook at the tentative budget when it comes along. In regards to revenues, as we all know, the main shortfall is in building permits. We're at 73.8%. Jamie, did you have something you wanted to add to the information I have here?
Yeah, I just want to say, building permits, I got really good news. I looked at that today. So as of today, we're at 90% of the 300. So we adjusted the budget down from 400 to 300,000 and we're at 90%
Right.
of 300,000.
Well, that's good news.
That is good news.
That's
It's
good
better
news.
than the report that you have in your.
I always like good news, so thank you for updating that report. Very much appreciated. Expenses seem in most areas to be in line. We're 83%, I think, through the year, and our expenses seem to be in line. I think sales tax is the most concerning item in the revenues. I would just add this from a financial perspective. I think maybe in our work session next week, we need to talk about this. Historically, in the last few years, not forever, but in the last few years, any subsidy to the aquatic center occurred out of RDA funds, not out of sales tax. John has indicated that the council could program some of those RDA funds as a cushion for years going forward, because if that has to be subsidized out of sales tax, let's just say it's 125,000, that has a dramatic effect on the budget. So you do have the opportunity to relook at the plan for RDA funds according to John, and maybe pencil some of that out as a potential safety net for the budget in coming years. You may want to consider that. Jamie, what would you like to add? You have the graph here. You want to talk about sales tax?
Actually, I wanted to about aquatic center.
You want to talk about,
Aquatic center really fast.
okay, talk about aquatic center very fast.
John, under finance, aquatic center, fund balance.
The PowerPoint?
So after our inquiry during the tentative where we talked about what happened with the aquatic center in 2021, I put this together and you can see right at the bottom where it says April 2021. Yep, right there. You can see where it's the last time that we've been negative in the aquatic center as far as fund balance. That it was actually in, if you see that little blip in October of 20, somewhere along there, there was a decision made to transfer the 85,000 that was budgeted from general fund into the aquatic center. And then after reconciling at the end of the year, that is what made that fund balance go up to like 176,000. And so what this graph is month to month of where the fund balance is in the aquatic center, all the way to the end of April, where right now we're at 50,000 in the aquatic center. So at the end of each year, what's happening is, I'll have you move forward, might be a little easier to explain. So I went back to 2019. And what the blue is showing is RDA funds that were transferred into the aquatic center for 2019. And then the orange or red, to me that looks orange, is what was transferred from the general fund. And so moving forward to 2019 to 2020, you can see we're not transferring general fund for operational expenses anymore since that fiscal year of 2021, which was that December I said that there was a decision made to transfer those funds. So the last 2 years, there hasn't been any funds transferred, and neither for 2024. The large amount in 2021 that was transferred from the RDA fund was to pay off the bond. And then moving forward, we're just using RDA funds to cover operations. Next slide. And then this is just showing our net revenue over expenditures in the aquatic center since fiscal year 2020. Right now, at the end of April, we're at a negative 125,000, but our season just started. So it started by what, Saturday? Yeah. So there's about 6 weeks of, well, not quite 6, what is that, 5 weeks of revenues to come in, and also swim lessons and reservations and all that to come in. So, and then there's usually about 600,000 that's generated between the 4.5 months. And so that's probably right about par.
So to summarize that, when I acted really surprised when we were told that the aquatic center made $180,000, that was with $85,000 being transferred to the general fund, which was budgeted but wasn't needed in that year. And that's contributed to why we have a balance in there, or a negative balance as she's showing here.
Just want to make sure I made that report. We promised we
Okay,
would. So.
thank you. Councilmember Delpaz, did you have a question?
With the 6 weeks remaining of this fiscal year that will increase our revenues for the pool for North Shore, what is your estimate that we'll be at? Are we going to be similar to last year on that graph? Are we going to be similar to 2022? I know that I'm not expecting you to be exact, but 6 weeks, do you have a way to estimate what June revenues usually are?
So yeah, honestly, I haven't done that just yet. I will. I'll bring it back to you. I'm going to say that we'll probably be using some of the RDA funds, but it depends on, how the weather is the next month, how that goes. When we did the fee increase, when we went from the $6.50 to the $8, that was based on if we could repeat last year into this year, it would be $8. And if you remember the conversation, that doesn't include depreciation. It was just operational. we don't include depreciation in the aquatic center. And so, yeah, it'll be interesting to see where that $8 is, where that lands.
Which in my opinion is a funky thing of governmental accounting, because at some point in time, we're not going to be able to take $250,000 out of RDA funds to refurbish the pool. So yeah, you start putting depreciation in there, it's a different story, which ought to be in there, in my opinion. It's not Jamie's fault, it's just government accounting. But just think about it, if we had not got the RDA funds to put $275,000 on, where would that have come from? General fund, right?
Probably.
So on a cash basis, yeah, positive. With depreciation, it's not positive. Okay, thank you. Did you have the sales tax, John? Did you want to put that up there, the sales tax slide?
He had it up there.
Oh, did he?
Well, you were talking.
Okay, I didn't see it. Any questions on that? Okay, we'll move on then to Councilmember Watson, who will report on administration and recreational activities.
Thank you. I have a couple of reports, one from Bryce and one from Justin. Bryce has been working with Councilman Severing and I to help increase usage for the amphitheater. And he had a really great idea to ask a city employee that he knew had a personal drone and made videos with to come to our first of the year, first event after having sound and lights at the amphitheater scheduled, which is June 7th. This is the community band. He had this idea to ask this employee, who agreed, to bring their drone and to help highlight this amphitheater. And hopefully we can make a video, marketing video, to help encourage more increased usage there this summer. Also, at an upcoming meeting, there might be a suggestion made that the amphitheater for this first and next summer as well might have some kind of discounted sale price, since we're just barely starting opening up and wanting to kick off that usage hard and fast. And so that's something for you to think about. Then the other report I had was from Justin. Opening weekend was this weekend at North Shore. The fitness programs start on the 28th. Swim lessons training is this week. Tackle football signups start June 1st. Swim lessons begin June 3rd. Food truck Thursday is Thursdays from 5 to 8 p.m. at North Ogden Park. The Children's Entrepreneur Market is June 6th. And then there's a Movies in the Park event on June 7th. And that is in Pleasant View Park. Remember, we coordinate with other neighboring cities on those to provide more movies. So anyway, lots of events coming up here for recreation, but that's all I had to share.
Thank you. Councilmember Pulver.
Okay, so I think a lot of people participated in the cleanup that was a few weeks ago, but that was spectacular, I thought anyways. I know they're working through potholes. I just encourage people that are hearing my voice to use the website to sign up so that they can, instead of just getting called in, because that takes city staff to put it in there, et cetera, et cetera. We had a good appreciation lunch. I thought that was awesome. Katie does an awesome job at that. She's not here, but she can hear me, I guess, later. But I thought it was well attended and I think well appreciated as well. Obviously, the runoff has started. You can see the detention ponds filling up. And so I guess just be careful around those things. I haven't seen any really horrible things anywhere, but there's been a couple of areas, especially runoff from the new water tower that we're trying to figure out. And then did some work underneath Fruitland, and then on the both sides to make sure that we're not adding thousands of tons of dirt down into the culverts, I guess, on the north side of 2100. Anyway, that was awesome. And then obviously when we have Barker Park events to clean up or whatever, Public Works is helping on that, which I think is great. And just be wary. I think the biggest thing is when it comes to streets themselves is to, I don't say be vigilant, but or be narcs either. But if you see a resident or, you know, someone that you know putting stuff on the street that shouldn't be on the street, just maybe inform them that there are requirements for that. That's kind of what everybody needs to help with. So thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Pulver. Mr. Call, Capital Projects.
Yeah. So with the detention basin, there's not a real new update. We're still waiting for signatures in NRCS to make their decision. Loman View Pickleball, we are ready to go. They're going to put down the coating, the paint, and it will be ribbon cutted. The ribbon cutting will happen on June 26th at 3 p.m. So we will send you out an invite for that. We would have done it later in the evening, except at 6:30 is the employee party. So you should have an invite on that from Katie, but we'll make sure that you get those as well if you haven't done it. The playground over there is also going in. It goes in this week, actually. So we'll do both of those kind of as an official ribbon cutting on the June 26th. North Ogden Plaza, which is the RDA discussion, that is kind of basically in the holding pattern. We're not sure if any of the property owners down there are going to apply for the RDA grant program the city was putting together. Although we do anticipate that the city will put in some interest for infrastructure, talk about sidewalks and things like that in that area for the RDA group.
So nobody submitted anything yet?
I haven't got them all, but I haven't heard of any landowners in the North Ogden Plaza having submitted. So that's down by Kurtz and True Value. I believe they're supposed to get their letter of intent in by June 30th. And then we will then respond back to those who gave us a letter of intent and say, okay, here's the next step to formally apply. We just kind of wanted to get a feel for how much requests would come in and how much money is being requested before we programmed it out. So, and then that will come back to the RDA board, which is the council when you're wearing your other hat. And then the RDA board will make a recommendation to the city council on the expenditure. And so there'll be a process that the council will be involved in the late August, early September timeframe to actually review the applications. So we'll bring back more details on that. The public safety building is almost done. We're just working through a few punch list items that are just kind of cleanups. Water reservoir up on 2000 that Councilmember Pulver mentioned, they are still backfilling and doing work to get that squared away, tied down, and full of water. And then the Waterworks Park, which is over by the old Public Works building, just kind of northwest of the stump. That should start being installed in the beginning of July. The parts for the Waterworks Park are coming from Germany. So they, I believe, are in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean right now. But they'll be here soon. And we're pretty sure they're not going through Baltimore. So, and I think that's it.
Thank you, John. Now we'll have public comments. Sorry, just trying to follow protocol. So if you'd step up and tell us your name, and if you're a resident of North Ogden, and please limit your comments to no greater than 5 minutes, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Travis Taylor. I am not I don't live in North Ogden. I live in Morgan County. This is my petition for annexation that we've been working on that's been up on the screen. I just have a couple of questions. Number one is there are thresholds that we have to meet when we make application on area valuation, that sort of thing. So if in the course of bringing in these islands, if those people don't want to come in and you drag them in, I mean, that's one reason why we just got the signatures for the property that we have under contract. It's unanimous right now for the property proposed under the map. But if we bring in others, and this may not be the case in ours, but that if you force those to be included in the annexation map, and it skews that so that the applicant can no longer meet the requirement of the state code as far as valuations and areas, then does it kill the application? I just have no idea. So, I mean, I guess part of your discussion when, and maybe your attorney could answer that or provide a better answer. The other thing is, as you're going through the annexation process, each applicant has an opportunity to withdraw their signature of support. So if you have unanimous, say an application like mine, and you guys have a bunch of holes in your map, I saw, but if there's an application like mine where you come in with, a few, and then the city drags in some others, and at the time you meet the threshold for area requirements and valuation requirements, but somebody withdraws their signature, and the application on its own would still be able to go through, but because of I don't want to call it hostile, but the city forcing everybody else in, it skews it so that the original petitioner's annexation petition is no longer in compliance with the city code. Then what happens? So I just don't want to get caught up in that. That's the reason why I brought in a clean one where I had the signatures. And I know that there are people, and I think you're exactly right. There are people that are surrounded by North Ogden's services, and they get a little bit of a free ride, and that is the argument that I've heard is, well, we don't want to pay city taxes until we have to pay city taxes. So just a couple of questions that I don't know the answer to, but we would like a.
Yeah. Could you leave us your phone number with Ryan, and we can have Mr. Call, who's also our city attorney,
Yes.
call you and kind of discuss it so we have the particulars and can get you
That'd be great.
correct answer. So if you'd give that to Ryan.
Will do.
Your contact information,
Yes.
then we'll have Mr. Call get back to you. He's the most likely one to have the right answer.
Perfect.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you. Sorry to make you wait. We
Oh,
just
no.
try to keep protocol.
Yeah, good discussion.
Okay, anyone online, John, or here, Mr. Swanson?
Philip Swanson, North Ogden resident. So much to say, so little time. Maybe one of them will share their time with me. No. Okay. Well, maybe not. Okay.
Regarding the city sponsorships, appreciate the efforts Councilmember Holbrook put on, but I think we need to get to the brass tacks. It's a fiscal question and less of a policy question. I think rather than trying to establish what we will and won't, and I think what we will and won't pay, I think we need to do, as we normally do in budgeting, how much do we have to spend? And I think you need to set that first, that you have a line item for those sponsorships, and you say, this year we can afford $15. And then you have a grant application process similar to what's being done with the RDA funds. And all those that are seeking funds to apply, then the council can sit down as a board or as a committee, and you can make the hard decision that these guys get money and these guys don't, or you all get money and here's how much. But I'm afraid that we'll get into emotional spending if we just start taking applications and then decide who gets funded and who doesn't, and somebody's got a really good soft pitch and somebody doesn't. I think it's really easy for our hearts to get in the way of our
Financial policy. With the winter parking, you may be a little shocked, but I agree with Dr. Shoup. I feel like there has been well, I'll just write down what I wrote, that there's an inequity that's been created because policy was made based on giving preferential treatment to individuals rather than policy that's based on what's good for the city as a whole. With the roads, a 5% property tax that you're wrestling with right now will raise $135,000. A $5 a month transportation utility fee will raise $400,000. So now we're at over $500,000 that you'll be asking the residents. That's if you only do a $5. Add to that enterprise fee increases of $6 a month. That's another $500,000. We're now over $1 million that council is looking at asking community members to pay in addition over this next year. Just to give you, if that were all property taxes, it would be something around a 42% property tax hike. That's what you're looking at putting on the North Ogden residents this year. Also, budgets are tight for everyone. My budget's not as tight as some people's is, but we do have folks in the older generation that are on fixed incomes that have very tight budgets. We also have young families who are trying to raise kids who have exceptionally tight budgets, and there isn't a dollar to spare. We have to be careful as a city that we don't get into class warfare and start saying that one class gets treated differently than another because of their age. Limited income is limited income, doesn't matter what age you are. And most folks, if you read all the economic indicators right now, many folks in our community are struggling financially. And then just one last thought on the annexation piece. As you're considering whether or not to force annexation, we plow their roads. When they need police, it's North Ogden Police that answers. Sure it is. Sure it is. If your dad calls 911,
He gets the county sheriff.
North Ogden Police will be there before the county sheriff is. Yeah. Fire, if his house is burning, Northview Fire is going to come long before Weber Fire arrives. And it just is. And all of that is provided at no cost. And I think that's just part of the consideration. I'm not saying I'm for it, but it's just one thing that needs to be considered as we talk about these county islands. Most of them are vacant, so there's not a lot on them that anything's going to happen. But lastly, as I run out of time here, I really appreciate the hard work that you do and the time that you spend and the very complex questions that you get to answer, especially when it comes to whether or not you're going to ask for another $1 million from North Ogden residents this year. Thanks for all you do.
Kevin Burns, North Ogden. I don't want this to sound like the airing of the grievances from Festivus. So I have a list. Mayor, I don't know if every road in North Ogden has a pothole on it, but I know all the ones I drive on do.
Well, I've just been reading social media, so I figured.
I'm just, yeah. On the transportation study, is there any other money available for that somewhere? Some transportation funds that might be able to cover some of that expense? And that was a great study. That was a great graph that went up on the board. So why can't that be a study with some good legalese attached to it? YCC, that discussion has come up a number of times as we've talked about who we're going to allow funds to go to. And the YCC, I just hate to see them included in that group because they really are a public safety service. And if you've ever been a cop out on the beat trying to figure out where to house somebody that needs a service, it can be really frustrating if there's no place to put them. Maybe we could ask YCC for some stats as far as North Ogden usage. No demographics involved, just a sheer number of 10 per year or 15 per year. Certainly don't include any identifying information or anything like that, but maybe that would be helpful in having that conversation.
They have that. They've shared that with us.
Okay.
On the usage.
All right.
North Ogden, higher than you would expect.
I'll bet you it's not. I'll bet you it's not higher than I would expect.
Not than you. You've been a police officer.
One of those issues we dealt with dealing with hospital folks too. Trying to find a place. When you talk about the reporting and as keeping track of who gets the money each year, maybe a reporting process similar to we use at RAMP, where annually they report, how their projects are going, and then that helps us decide if they get future awards. Who's paying for the additional resources necessary for the parade on the 4th of July? That was one of the discussions that was had in moving Cherry Days away from the 4th of July. Was we didn't have to pay officers, we didn't have to pay road guys, we didn't have to pay people the holiday pay to cover those services, to cover those. So who's paying that bill now? Is that going to come out of the city's general budget? Is that something Cherry Days committee's raising money for? How is that working? Yesterday, you looked like you're going to say something. Okay. I went by the old city shops and looked at the place where we've talked about putting the $100,000 worth of doors. And we talked last meeting with the tentative budget that maybe that could be held on to for a little while. The Old City Shops is kind of a blighted area. We're the messy neighbors in the neighborhood over there. And I don't know that $100,000 worth of doors is going to fix that. So maybe some other plan, maybe plan B. I was driving by Barker Park the other night and found a mountain bike clinic taking place at the park where the mountain bikers, there was 30-ish, 35-ish mountain bikers destroying the grass at our multi-million-dollar amphitheater. So I was a little concerned. Hopefully that's not something that's going to happen in the future, or if it is, we have a more designated trail for them to use. Drove by the detention basin this morning, forgot to mention it until Councilman Pulver mentioned water safety, but I noticed some fence was down next to the detention basin. I don't know if it was a crash or some fence that was destroyed and some people couldn't get there. So, and then I heard Council Member Watson just talk about the food truck rally, the food truck things on Thursday nights, and I haven't seen any marketing on any of our city apparatuses for that. It's all been, word of mouth and somebody's, back page or whatever like that. It'd just be nice to be able to see that market a little bit before. How much time do I have left?
1 minute.
Wow, that's pretty good. I thought I'd run out faster. I thought I'd need my first 5 minutes. So yeah, I kept a list tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. John, I think we have a couple hands raised online. So it looks like we're going to go to Julie Anderson. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, Julie.
Julie Anderson, a North Ogden resident. Just had a couple of things that I wanted that kind of perturbed me just a little. And so I just want to get it off my chest. I appreciate everything that you do. I know it's not easy as a city council. But one of the things I would like to see is that depreciation is included in the swimming pool. I think it gives us a better idea of exactly how that pool is really doing. Even though we've paid it off, I would like to see that included. The transportation fee really bothers me. It's not just because it's people on a fixed income. Every year, and I understand prices are going up and that our roads need this done, but I think we need to really understand how we're spending our money and maybe how we put the roads in, where we put them in. $15 is kind of, if it comes to that, is a month. If you'd said like $15 every other month or something, it might not be so bad, but $15 a month is an expensive amount. When it comes to the annexation lands, most of ours are usually attached with people that it's their land. And we need to be respectful of people's lands. And I looked up the HB 330, and it actually is only for within a county of first class. It does not say that. It says not within a municipality. And so as of right now, that isn't something that we should even be considering. And I don't think we should future consider it either, because it's going to affect a lot of people who have lands. Well, I know have part of their land that's in the city and then part of it's in county. So just my thoughts for tonight is I would much sooner we'd start really looking at the full picture. I sometimes feel like we don't look at the full picture, and it's creating some problem for us. So thank you.
Okay, Susan Kilborn has her hand raised. Let's hear from Susan.
Hi, Susan Kilborn, North Ogden City, longtime resident. First of all, I want to thank you all for allowing us citizens to be able to provide input for you, and that you take it seriously and that you care. That means a lot. And not having that feeling, I can't even imagine what it would be like to live here. So I have a couple comments. Phil pretty much stole my thunder on supporting Dr. Shoup. I know sometimes he may rub people the wrong way, but the points he brings up are totally legal and accurate. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. And I'm not saying who's the goose or who's the gander. Also, I appreciate JD saying something about seniors being on limited incomes. And I'm glad that Phil brought up the fact that we have a lot of citizens with big families, and it affects them all as well. So those are my comments. Now I have a suggestion, and this primarily goes to our city attorney. And I would suggest to you and to actually all of you on the council that when you start determining who is a sponsor, who's under sponsorship and who is under partnership, that you very accurately define each and every one of those. Because first of all, people want to know, they need to know, we need to know, and to protect the city from any potential liabilities. They are different between the two. So I know John will look into that. Now, I have a comment from Handsome Husband here who says, why in the world is there not more golf courses in North Ogden? Moving right along, I have a question as to, under the flash vote, why the amphitheater was not mentioned under recreation. Do we have the amphitheater classified as something different? Crickets, crickets, crickets. No answer?
Well, we always don't answer public comments, but John looks like he'd like to answer that. So I'm
Okay.
going to let him answer that.
I would love that.
So the survey that we did was kind of focused on where are people going in the city and outside of the city related to parks. And because the amphitheater hasn't been widely used, it wasn't included, but we definitely it'd be good to include it on a future survey. Although it probably won't be on the next one either, because that's really focused on recreation programs, but it was mentioned in quite a few of the comments that were there.
Okay, great. I'm glad to hear that. Also, another question I would like to know, does North Ogden City have a designated representative or liaison between the Lakeview Heights Homeowners Association and North Ogden City? Since the HOA up here is a part of North Ogden City and therefore must be in compliance with all of North Ogden City's requirements, as well as Weber County, as well as the state of Utah. Do we have a liaison member?
No, I don't think we have liaison members on any HOA. They're just subject to the same inspection and community service observations, I think, as anyone else in the city.
Okay,
So the
great.
answer to that would be no.
Okay, two more things, and I'm hurrying. I'm really hurrying. This is
Hey.
Council Member Pulver. Don't forget that you and I are working on communication and improving communication between citizens and getting information out. On my Facebook page, I'm asking people from all around how they get their information, whether it's, it's something they pay attention to, what their ideas are. And so I want to reconnect with you. I know you're busy and I am as well, but I think it's important enough that we do that.
Yes.
Okay. And also one more thing, and that's it. There's been discussion on one of the North Ogden City Facebook pages on who is responsible for maintaining sidewalks in front of our homes. And my understanding is on my property, or mine and HH property, that is our responsibility to maintain that. Am I correct on that, John?
The attorney answer is it depends. So the city does ask that residents be responsible, and in particular where your drive approach is. The reality is that there are other agencies that also require the city to have some responsibility as well. And so it depends on exactly what's going on and what the needs to repair are.
Okay. Okay, that's it, guys. And I hope you have a great evening. And I appreciate you all so very much. And thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Anyone else like to comment this evening? Anyone online like to comment this evening? I'm not seeing any, so we'll move on to item number 12. Council, do you have any additional comments, Councilmember Pulver?
Just a quick one, the sidewalk issue in front of the one elderly folk that came up and we're talking about. I did connect with one of the other siblings that was living in Salt Lake and just gonna keep him up to date. Dave said hopefully not hopefully, at the maximum, the end of June. So that's in the forefront. So just maintaining that and making sure that's on because that was pretty bad. I drove past and thought, holy mackerel. Yeah, it looked like a bomb went off. So yeah, it wasn't good.
Okay, Councilmember Watson.
As you know, I've sent an email out. The city council has been asked to be a part of the Cherry Days parade and to have a float representing the city council. The city youth council could as well be in it. And John suggested maybe they share a float, have the youth council and the city council participate together. I don't know if that's something that everyone is interested in participating in, but I could register our float if that's something that you all want to participate in. And then there is a pretty old float that's in our possession that would need quite a bit of work to fix up. So there was a suggestion made that the ramp 22,000 that typically is used for events in the city where we had quite a bit of money donated, sponsorship there. We could use some of that money to help fix up or make or create some kind of float opportunity. So is there any feedback or what are your thoughts on that?
Anybody, council, you want to defer and talk about that, the work session?
Yes. Work session.
Okay, John, let's get that on the agenda so we can get Councilmember Watson an answer on that. Okay, anyone else? Anyone, department heads here like to make a comment? Mr. Call, are you raising your hand, Ryan? Do you want to make another comment?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I wanted to tell everybody that June 25th is primary elections. Therefore, we're not going to have a city council meeting that day. So we will be holding a work session on June 18th.
Real session.
Real session. Just kidding. A real session on the 18th.
That's to
we
approve
have
our,
agenda items for that.
it's the impact fees
Oh,
and our
okay.
fee schedule. We need to approve that,
Perfect.
as well as the last opportunity for our tax rate.
Okay, perfect. Mr. Call, do you have anything for us?
I already mentioned the employee party, but I think Christina might have mentioned this, but on Monday, yesterday, we did have 900 people at the pool. So even though it was 70 degrees, so it was sunny and people came swimming.
Good. Anything else? Thought I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn.